Okay, we are live. It looks like we're live. I mean, I believe we're live. I hope so. It's saying that we are. So we're going to go ahead and assume that we are live. If not, we'll figure it out on the flip side. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Jamie J. I am the CEO and founder, believe it or not, of Bottleneck Virtual Assistants. And one of the reasons that I have this show live with Bottleneck is because I love helping you stop the bottleneck in your business. And believe it or not, it most likely is you. It's me. It's the leaders of our organization. But we're going to be talking with Liam Martin today of Time Doctor and Running Remote. We're going to be talking a bunch of cool stuff. So before I introduce him, let me do the quick intro here, and we'll be back in approximately 30 All right, we're back. Welcome to Live with Bottleneck. My name is Jamie J. I'm the CEO and founder of Bottleneck Virtual Assistants. And today we are going to be talking with Liam Martin, the co-founder and CMO of Time Doctor and Running Remote. We're going to be talking about how to build a productive remote team. As you can possibly imagine, this is one of my favorite points of topic. And quickly before I bring him out here, Liam is the co-founder and CMO of Time Doctor, as I said, .com. It's a premier event for the founder of Remote First Businesses Running Remote. After graduating with a master's in sociology from McGill University, Liam opened up a small tutoring company which grew to over 100 employees and looked to solve a problem with remote employees not reporting accurate work data, which turned into staff.com. He consults on outsourcing and process design and is passionate about how to gain insights into the inner workings of how people work. So without any further ado, please allow me to introduce you to Liam Martin. How are you, sir?
I'm good. How are you, Jamie?
Oh my gosh, I am and I don't know if you did know this, but when I first, just for those of you who know, when we were in the green room, I was like, Liam, I'm a huge fan, man. I read all your, and he's like, okay, I've heard this before, but it's true, man. I really appreciate what you do and what you stand for. Big, huge fan.
Yeah, we really appreciate that. I'll tell the content team that you read all the stuff.
Well, I wonder maybe before we jump into kind of talking about how to build, how to run, how to operate an effective remote-based team, which let's admit is pretty dang popular right now, massively trending. I wonder if we can learn a little bit more about who you are and maybe some background.
Sure. So Liam Martin, human being, more specifically in Canada. I'm currently at a bug out location in between Ottawa and Montreal, Canada. I've been here for a little bit over 4 months. I kind of jumped in on the whole lockdown thing a little bit early because I was a little bit scared about it. And we're just, for us, the two products we have, Time Doctor, Running Remote. Time Doctor is a time tracking tool for remote teams. And then Running Remote is the largest conference on building and scaling remote teams. The last couple ones we had in Bali, Indonesia. The next one we were planning on doing in Austin, Texas, April 20th. And everyone now knows that, unfortunately, all conferences got canceled. So we ended up going virtual. We ran our very first virtual event, which was a pretty appropriate for us because we're about remote work, so it seemed to make sense. And we're running our next one in the next couple of weeks, June 17th to 18th. And we're basically just teaching everybody the fundamentals of how to not just build a remote team, but how to actually scale a remote team, which there isn't that much information on.
You know what? You know there's not, but there's it's starting to really kind of make its way to the forefront. I've talked with several people a couple years ago. There's absolutely no way we can work remotely. We have to be in the office in order to get things done effectively, efficiently. And those same people today are preaching about the productivity levels have increased and all of that from our remote-based work environments or distributed workforce, as Matt Wellenberg from Automatic likes to say. And I wonder if maybe you can speak to a little bit of maybe what you've seen, because your finger's right on the pulse.
Well, I've seen all of that. I won't necessarily name names, but a couple billion-dollar companies, the founding teams, I remember them saying, well, we would never be fully remote. It could never work for us. And these people that have built a couple years ago, the big asset was, do you have a billion-dollar office facility, right? Like that was kind of the next level up for all of these companies. And now they're recognizing that that massive investment that they made, that in a lot of cases is approximately about a third of their P&L. It is their biggest line item cost outside of staff, is now redundant. They don't need it anymore. And they're recognizing that they can do business in a much more efficient way. So to be completely honest with you, what's happened over the last couple months is we've had two opposite forces that are kind of accelerating remote work. You have the employer that realizes I can cut down the cost of my housing employees, providing desks for them, providing lunches for them, making all of the kind of details that connect to an office. I can get rid of that cost. And since I've now seen my employees work for 3 months under COVID, it looks like they're producing as good of a result or better of a result than when they were in the office. And then on the employee side, the employees are saying, you can no longer tell me that I can't work from home. That excuse no longer exists, because I've already worked from home for 3, 4, 5, 6 months, and things were pretty good. The company didn't fall apart and everybody was just fine. So we've seen, at least from our data, in 2018, US Census Bureau data said 4% of the US workforce was working full-time remotely. And at the peak of COVID, we saw a peak in our own data of approximately 60%. That's floated down a little bit. So we're probably around like 40% right now. There's a whole bunch of jobs that really can't be made remote, which is, if you look at the pool of people who can work remotely, it's actually a relatively small pool. And it's also significantly biased towards income, which we can get into a little bit later. But fundamentally right now, the majority of people that are making over $100,000 a year, as an example, are working remotely. And that's a very exciting time, because we didn't expect these type of numbers till 2028, 2030.
Yeah, it's funny that you say that. I was reading an article from, I think it was on Rallyware. I don't know. I was just researching, and that was one of the results that popped up. And it says 73% of companies will have distributed teams by 2028.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that was an estimate that everyone, even me, I kind of looked at that and thought to myself, I don't know. But now the data is very clear. We've in essence jumped to that point instantaneously within weeks, basically. We've had clients, as an example, at Time Doctor that are in the BPO space, and they've had to move 20,000 employees within 24 hours inside of their office to a distributed workforce. And they've just realized, hey, now that we've done this, we really shouldn't go back to that previous model, because it's a lot more efficient to do what we're currently doing.
Yeah, one of the questions that people have is security. So when you're in a controlled environment, I get that. You're in one location, there's oversight on the technology, there's security, you're leaving your phone maybe in a BPO. Just for those that don't know what a BPO is, business process outsourcing, and there's these offices where you have a bunch of people sitting in there, and they handle all things from maybe customer service to answering phones, all kinds of different things. But some of that technology is proprietary, and please correct me or add to this, Liam, if I'm wrong.
Sure.
Pretty sure I'm not.
No, you're absolutely right. So generally, if you want to get into the technical aspects of it, there's PCI compliance, HIPAA compliance, and SOC 2 compliance. So those are the two major three security certificates that you need to, as an example, if you work at MasterCard inside of a BPO, you need to be bank level secure. So I've been in some of these facilities, and they literally, like, they take your phone and they have you put it into a little locker, and they literally pat you down before you go into the actual customer support facility. So you
Right.
can't do that inside of remote teams. To be completely honest with you, there's a lot of barriers that you have to get past, but lesser security audits like SOC 2 and HIPAA. HIPAA is for medical transcription, and SOC 2 is for accounting. So not bank data, but like collecting, economic information. A lot of those things can be done remotely, and we have plenty of clients that do it remotely. And the beauty is that process is getting a lot easier. So generally, as an example, with HIPAA compliance, you would need proper documentation and auditing of where you spent your time on a computer, who you were interacting with during your computer session, so that if there is a data leakage, you can audit that back to the individual employee. Even stuff like password chains. So we use a tool called 1Password, and what we use it for is actually, it's a really great way to be able to make sure that you have control over just the general logins of your organization. I don't even know what my own passwords are. They're all ciphers. So 1Password can create a cipher, and then that is what I use to log in to all of the stuff that I do inside of the business. So if I had to let someone go in the future, I don't actually have to change 48 different passwords. I have to change the 1Password access. And then that all flips back over to the individual. So those are little things that you just have to learn, unfortunately, with regards to remote work, which is why I'm here to teach you all of those little stats so that you know what you're supposed to be doing.
We use a similar tool called LastPass. So
Same thing.
I think it's very similar.
Tomato. It's basically the same company.
Exactly. And I just wanted to say, hey, thank you, Mike Sakamary. Good to hear from you. And Amani Roberts, great to see you as well. I do want to take this quick opportunity to say, if you have any questions for Liam, please ask away. If you think I know a lot about distributed workforce or remote-based working, virtual assistants, things like that, Liam is the person that I would go to and to learn even more about this. It's just incredible, the knowledge that he has and he shares. And again, if you're not familiar with Liam, he's the co-founder and CMO of Time Doctor, and he's also one of, as he stated, his own words, passion project is runningremote.com. It's the largest conference, from what I understand, to learning about how to work with distributed workforces. And this couldn't come at a more timely time, I guess you can say, because we're all experiencing this. Many of us, I shouldn't say all, but many of us are experiencing how to work remotely. So I have so many questions for you, Liam, and I'd like to start off with the first one saying, for those that are relatively new, we touched on security, which is, I think, really nice, but how I'm seeing more and more people become comfortable with this. What do you attribute that to? I mean, we were forced into this with COVID, but what do you attribute people becoming a little bit more comfortable and saying, hey, the Facebooks of the world and the automatics of the world, the Twitters, giving more and more remote-based opportunities to their current employees?
So I think there's actually a whole bunch of things to kind of unpack inside of that statement. I think historically, the reason why a lot of people didn't go remote is I would show people the stats, and business moves slowly. So like innovation moves quickly, but operations does not move quickly at all. So to be able to innovate on a new way to work, as an example, is just something that, and the other thing inside of remote teams, or inside of business in general, which is crazy, is things can get picked up and they just proliferate because they get picked up. A perfect example is Facebook and the open office mentality. Study after study has shown that open offices do not work, that they're actually detrimental towards innovation and collaboration. And yet, because Facebook did it, it ended up being this trend inside of all tech companies. So to be completely honest with you, a lot of the companies that I've spoken to that are now going remote, they've told me privately, listen, my board and the venture capitalists that have invested money in this company are never going to let us go remote, ever. It's not going to happen. But now they have an opportunity space where they're saying, wow, okay, well, we have to do this remote work thing. And now here's the data. Here's the data set. And we have a quarter of data to be able to tell you, this is the success that we're currently having. If we go to the next stage where we make this permanent, it's something that we can very easily, literally turn an extra 20 to 30% profit inside of our business. We just did a study recently at Running Remote, and we found that there was, inside of remote first companies, there was no discernible advantage towards venture capital, which is a very interesting and kind of counterintuitive insight, which is people that had offices and companies and remote companies, basically, if you got like a $5 million Series A as an example, you would spend a lot of that money on a new office, and you would hire new people to be able to go into that office. And that was about a 20 to 30% drag on their growth. Whereas remote first companies didn't have that drag. So number one, they grew faster if they raised capital, although very few remote first companies raise money simply because of the situation that we had and the bias towards remote work. But then the ones that did actually had a net 20 to 30% increase versus the other people that had raised but got an office. So, the unit economics are there. It's just at scale, you really need to be able to see 20, 30, 40 companies doing it aggressively. And Shopify, Envision, all of these companies that have always been remote or at least are just like co-located are going to be huge drivers towards the generalized adoption of this industry.
And Raina said to say, hello, I'm here, Liam. Hello, she's from the Philippines.
Hello.
I like to think of, I'm a very systems and process oriented person. For me, that helps with every
literally book right next to my desk. I don't know if you know Sam Carpenter, Work the System, one of the best books on process documentation you can pick up. And no one reads it, which is funny. That is Work the System by Sam Carpenter.
Thank you for sharing that. I will definitely check that out. I love it. And so what we do is we create a bunch of workflows every time we create a new task. What I absolutely love about a distributed workforce or working remotely is it is so important to understand what job roles and responsibilities are within an organization that's remote based or driven remotely, because you have to make sure things get done so things don't fall through the cracks. And we all know it's always going to happen. There's always going to be things that fall through the cracks. But my point is, these are living, breathing documents. And once something does fall through a crack, we identify that friction point or that gap, and we repair that by updating the workflow or the process. Much in the same way that I think this transition that you're talking about from an actual physical location that may be somewhat ego-driven, right? That transition from, the brick and mortar to remote based is living and breathing in that context. If you understand what I'm trying to say from there.
Yeah, no, I think you hit the nail on the head. One of the things that I tell companies all the time is remote companies have to act like big companies a lot faster than most other companies do. And the reason being is process documentation. The two major barriers towards remote work is proper communication and lack of documentation. And documentation is not just write stuff down, but it's making sure that there's a process in place to be able to know that that information is being deployed effectively. What are your processes? Should they change? Should they not change? As you had mentioned, a living document. I love GitLab. Perfect example of it. A huge remote team. I think they have over 2,000 remote employees right now. Yeah. And they have the largest open source process document on planet Earth. It's at about.gitlab.com/handbook. It's 3,200 pages. Dimitri, who is the CTO and co-founder of GitLab and spoke at the first year of Running Remote, brought us through the entire document. If you go to our YouTube channel, you'll be able to check it out. But it's absolutely amazing. And the other thing that's really cool about GitLab is they encourage you to steal that process document. So they say, take our handbook, literally create your own GitLab repository, fork that repository, and then you'll be able to optimize it and change it around however you'd like. So that's very cool. And the other thing that's neat about GitLab too is everything they do inside of their company is open because they're open source software. So if you just type in GitLab running remote, they ended up sponsoring our conference, and all of the email exchanges, including the negotiation of that sponsorship, are all open source. So they put everything online, so you can see us negotiating back and forth for discounts on that sponsorship. So they really do act in a very much egalitarian manner, meaning anyone in that organization can get access to anyone else's information. And they believe that that's going to make a remote team run faster. We don't quite go that hard as them, but it's a very interesting experiment. And I mean, they're a multi-billion-dollar company.
Yeah, you know what's cool? Didn't Tesla for his gig factories? He left that all open source.
Oh yeah, I mean, I think that open source is definitely the way to go. I think if you can do it, do it. It not only helps everyone else out, but in reality, everyone's fearful that it's going to impact your competitors, like your competitors will get an upper hand. Generally, they won't. Very few competitors actually use that type of information. And even if they have access to it, it's generally not super useful. I mean, don't put up your secret sauce, like don't put your source code up for your app as an example, but everything else, put it up there.
Yeah, you know what? And even if it's something that's process driven, for us, for this StreamYard, and I have to take my hat off to Raina because we had a video on how to do this StreamYard, and she wrote down the process step by step. Well, that's no secret. But you know what we did is we turned around and gave it to one of our clients saying, hey, he said, how do you do that? I said, here you go. It was exactly step by step. And
not only that, if you turn that into a blog post and you put that up on your blog, people start consuming that content. And then they say, I always have a philosophy, which is you should just give too much. You should just give everything that you possibly can away for free. If there's a point in which you think to yourself, maybe I shouldn't give this away to people, that's the thing that you should give away. Because that's the thing that's actually going to end up producing a really fantastic return for your customers and attract more clients to you.
That's fantastic. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I just think that's the way that business should be ran anyways. What I'm really excited about is where we're going to be, say, a year from now. Because like I said, living, breathing, right? It's working itself out. And I can't wait to see what happens and what comes. And you said that technology moves really fast. Operations doesn't. Operations is we're still, and our team included, I will definitely not hide behind that. We're still trying to figure out new ways to present better, new ways to onboard better, new ways to, work with people better. And what systems do we use? What software do we use? How do we continue to keep our information secure for our clients? Things like that. How do you, when you experience things like this, big shifts in business, what are some of the things that you do to say, okay, we need to reset, rethink about this? Running remote, great example. It was live. Now it's not. It's virtual.
Right. I'll boil it down to stay calm, but take action. So whenever you have any type of economic disruption that occurs, it's really important. And I learned this from my old supervisor in graduate school. He was an expert in immigration and diasporas. So he would basically just work with the UN to be able to figure out, okay, in Darfur, let's see how people are getting out of this horrible situation. And the thing that he told me, which is true, every single time I see an economic collapse, a political collapse, anything like that, social collapse, is the people that move usually win. The people that stay put usually die. And that's exactly the same thing inside of business. So if you're thinking right now, I had a friend that I was talking to, and his business is delivering snacks into offices. And within 2 weeks after President Trump made his address to the nation, his business was down 87%. And it's an MRR business. It's basically a subscription-based business.
Monthly
so he's melted.
For those
right.
you don't know what MRR is.
Yeah. So his business is finished. And instead of saying to himself, well, let's just pack up and go home, he built a Slack bot to be able to have remote workers automatically order things and have it delivered to their individual homes. But then you would be charging the employer's credit card, right?
Oh.
And by the end, within 3 months, he's now got enough money inside of that business where he's functional. He's in essence ramen profitable. He can pay his bills and he can function, right? So survival is the most important thing that you can do. Outside of survival, you need to accelerate through the curve. So anytime you're experiencing, I mean, the stock market's a perfect example, right? We're at 18,000 points for the Dow Jones. We're now back to where we were pre-COVID. It was the biggest 50-day rally in the history of the stock market. Now, maybe that ends up disappearing, but man, it's too bad I didn't put all of my dollars in at, 18,000 points, because that would have been amazing. That's the type of thing that you need to think about right now. And one of those constants that will be here for the next few years at least, and will continue to accelerate, is remote work. So what are the tools that you need to deploy inside of remote work? What kind of infrastructure do you need to deploy? What kind of services are these employees and employers going to need to consume? You need to think about that, build that product, because we're literally in the first inning of remote work.
Oh yeah. I would say we're in the top of the first inning.
Right.
Yeah. Not only see, I love that you bring up a couple good points there too. One of the things that I am, again, I said earlier that I absolutely love about it, it forces us to create these systems and processes. A great example, I grew up in corporate America in my career life, right? I was in corporate America for 12 years. It took me 11 years to figure out how to get out. But
Right.
now I'm on my own, proudly unemployable. But what would happen is I could be sitting at a terminal, typing away, and my buddy next to me would say, "Hey, Jamie, how do I do this?" And I'd say, "Oh, you just go here and here and here and do it." Well, now we don't do that. Now we actually say, this is how we do it. We step by step by step, in written form, video form, whatever that is. And it's systematizing everything. Mm-hmm. And I love the fact, and that's where I think the operational is going to maybe take a while to get there. That's why I'm so excited to see, because we're in the top first, as you say, or the first inning. It's going to take a while. We got to play the game a little bit to figure out where we're going to be. People are afraid of what they don't know and what they don't understand.
Absolutely. And the lesson that you need to teach yourself constantly is to push yourself through that uncomfortable stage. Because I have a saying, which is, the secret to life is being comfortable having uncomfortable conversations. Whenever you feel a state of discomfort, usually you need to continue down that path. And almost, so if you have a difficult conversation with your wife, or if you have to deal with a business partner and you want to have a difficult conversation, or you have to fire someone inside of your company, yes, it's uncomfortable, but the moment you do it, you immediately feel better every single time. And it's one of those things, it's like, you have to do it. People hate to do it. They constantly put it off. But if you can build that into your mindset of saying, let's get comfortable by being uncomfortable right now, the world's your oyster. It's just, and I'm always learning that lesson too, because I don't want to have those difficult conversations with people, but I know the moment I do, I'm way better.
You're better for yourself. It's transparency, it's honesty, it's people coming into their own. And I think believe it or not, in my opinion, I think it drives confidence.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Well, I want to respect your time. So we're coming up on the 30-minute mark. And before I ask if there's any advice or anything you want to give your leaving remark, how do people learn more about you? How do they learn more about running remote? And what can they expect to get from it?
Sure. So running remote is going to be free, which is very, very easy. You just go to runningremote.com, you sign up, and you can get access to all of the talks that we're doing. And it's really on scaling a remote team. So there's plenty of information on how to get a virtual assistant, as an example. I'd highly suggest you talk to Jamie about that, because he probably knows way more about that than I necessarily would. But What we're really focused on is, how do we get to 500 people? How do we get to 1,000 people? Or how do we go from 10 to 100 people? And that's what we really focus on inside of Running Remote. And if you can't go to the live event, you can actually consume all of our previous talks for free. Again, talking about kind of giving away stuff that makes me feel a little bit uncomfortable. All of our talks are free on our YouTube channel. So if you just go to youtube.com/runningremote, you'll be able to see all of the talks. Dimitri, the director of support of Shopify, she went from 0 to 3,000 remote employees in 24 months. She talks about that story and how, what she had to go through in order to make that happen. Those are the things that we talk about inside of the conference. And again, if you can't make it, just go to the YouTube channel.
That's fantastic. Thanks for sharing. And before we wrap today, is there any words of encouragement, advice, anything like that that you'd like to share before we wrap that may help those that are listening now or in the future, since this is evergreen?
I think because we're in a current state of economic flux, things seem very difficult. But in reality, we've just experienced the largest movement of labor since the Industrial Revolution. This is probably the biggest opportunity inside of work that we've seen in the last 100+ years. And so if you're thinking right now, hey, I'm in a bad situation, I don't know what to do next, remote work could be that opportunity for you. And we're just starting this process. So I highly suggest you learn as much as you can and get into this industry, because it's going to be 20, 30, 40x the size of what it originally was even a year ago.
Man, Liam, thank you so much. I really appreciate you stopping by today. And thank you for you're sharing your wisdom. And you know what? Thanks for just sharing, Running Remote, making that free, giving people an opportunity to learn about that, because you could charge seriously an arm and a leg for that and it would still be worth it. But it's so kind of you. And I've talked with many people in your organization and helping all the parts that are moving, and everybody is fantastic. So kudos to you. And thanks for co-founding Time Doctor as well. I know a lot of people are getting a lot out of that.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me and the kind words. Running Remote for me was a passion project. It was my frustration of not trying to find this information and not getting it. So it's great that people are starting to enjoy it.
Yeah, thank you so much. If you can hold on one quick second, I'll go ahead and wrap up here. But yeah, don't leave just yet.
All right.
Let me finish this off. And again, I just want to say thank you to Liam Martin, the co-founder and CMO of Time Doctor. He's also coordinating runningremote.com. Seriously, go check it out. If you are looking for ways to scale a business with a distributed workforce, remote-based virtual assistant, whatever you want to call it, soon to be distant assistant. That's a nice little segue of a new category we're creating here. Definitely go check it out, runningremote.com. I think you're really going to enjoy it. If you want to learn more about Liam, you can send him an email, liam@runningremote.com. You can check them out on Facebook. You can check them out on Instagram, Twitter. You can also go to their YouTube channel, and it's also Running Remote. And the reference that Liam spoke about was the about.gitlab.com/handbook. It's a over 3,000 pages, 3,600 pages or whatever, of open sourced operational handbook. So go check that out there. If you have any questions coming in afterwards, I'll make sure to get those off to Liam. Again, my name is Jamie J, CEO and founder of Bottleneck Virtual Assistants. Thank you for letting Liam and I help you stop the bottleneck in your business. And we hope you have a fantastic day, and we'll talk to you again soon.